السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. حضراتكم كنتوا بتشوفوا مع بعض الفيلم القصير اللي موجود عن الاقتصادي العالمي الشهير من دولة بيرو، ديسوتو، متخصص في تحويل الاقتصاد غير الرسمي أو ما يسمى أحيانا بالاقتصاد الأسود لاقتصاد رسمي. السيد هرناندو ديسوتو هو رئيس معهد الحرية والديمقراطية، وأرجوكم ما تسيئوش بس فهم اسم المعهد الحرية والديمقراطية لأنه ملوش دعوة بالموضوعات إياها اللي ممكن تيجي في بالكم. هو خبير اقتصادي، يعتبر من أفضل الخبراء في العالم، مؤسس لهذا المعهد في بيرو مش في أمريكا. هو مؤلف كتاب الطريق الآخر وكتاب لغز رأس المال، وحائز على جائزة ميلتون فريدمان للحرية للعام 2004 والمقدمة من معهد كيتو. واشتغل الحقيقة في منظمات عالمية منها منظمة التجارة العالمية الجات وغيرها. بذل جهود كبيرة مع المعهد على المستوى المحلي في بلده بيرو، فتم إدماج 300 ألف من المشاريع الصغيرة في اقتصاد بيرو الرسمي. كانت بره الاقتصاد الرسمي، هنعرف منه ايه اللي قصدنا بيه اقتصاد رسمي واقتصاد غير رسمي. خلق 560 ألف فرصة عمل قانونية، وساهم في تحصيل إيرادات ضريبية إضافية 300 مليون دولار أمريكي. عن الوضع هنا في مصر ومن الدراسات انه يعني مفيش بيانات مؤكده عن حجم الاقتصاد غير الرسمي، لكن بعض الدراسات بتقول انه بيوصل ل 60 و70% من حجم الاقتصاد الرسمي، يعني ما بين 1.2 من عشرة ل 1.5 تريليون جنيه سنويا. الكلام ده يعني ايه؟ وليه هرناندو ديسوتو موجود في مصر النهارده؟ وليه كان موجود من فتره مش بعيده كنا بنحاول ان احنا نلتقي معاه؟ وليه جاء ذكره ايضا هنا في برنامج القاهرة 360 واحنا بنتكلم عن بعض الموضوعات الاقتصادية؟ دي حاجات هنحاول نعرفها منه ونعرف المزيد منه. برحب بالسيد هرناندو ديسوتو، رئيس معهد الحرية والديمقراطية. I'm welcoming you, sir.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Why is your institute called Liberty and Democracy?
Well, we were born after a military dictatorship in Peru, and the members of the board thought it was an appropriate time to call yourself Liberty and Democracy. It's actually a very bad word for an institution. Institutions that
Especially
have,
these days.
well, it's a bad word in the sense that it should not have, the name should not indicate a proclivity, it should indicate a bigger ideal.
What's the bigger idea?
Well, the bigger ideal in this part is that we are essentially about inclusion. That is what we started out to do. We came into existence just at a moment that we had a very big terrorist system in Peru, where over 70,000 people died. And it took us time to find out that essentially terrorism nurtured itself and financed itself from protecting the assets of the poor. And so when we gave the poor the assets, we found out that terrorism went away. So we should have been called the Institute for Inclusion, which is something that's important. You see, the way to look at it is the world has got 7 billion people, okay? 1 billion people are in the West, the United States, North America, Western Europe. Let's put in Japan and Singapore. 1 billion people are like you and me. We would be called westernized third worlders because we have ties, we got the watches, we understand the system, we're on television, we're already westernized in a certain way. That leaves 5 million. Of the 5 million, there's 1 billion that doesn't want to come into the system. But there are 4 billion people that since China left communism, since Russia and Central Asia and Eastern Europe left communism, they want to go in that direction. Every time an Egyptian migrates, a Moroccan migrates, a Libyan migrates, a Latin American migrates, they go to the north to market economies. And so they come to Cairo, they come to Tanta, they come to Alexandria, and that's your informal economy. People looking to come in and not having the means to come in, having a lot of obstacles. So we should have called ourselves the Ministry of Inclusion because that's what's going to characterize the next 2 generations.
So what we're talking here, because sometimes you refer to it as black economy. Is it referred to as black economy, or is it just informal sector of the economy? Because people misjudge or mistake the word black economy.
That's right. Before a concept clarifies, the debate goes on as to what you should call people, right? Are Mexicans North Americans, or are they Latin Americans, for example, right? Are Russians really Europeans, or are they Eurasians? So we're in that issue. So what you have is a black economy is essentially, the way I would describe it, a criminal economy. An informal economy is composed of people who want to be legal but cannot be legal.
Or cannot afford to be legal.
Or cannot afford to be legal. I brought you, as I told you before, a little example.
Please.
Okay, out of going to different Egyptian industries and even going to Egyptian jails, we put together documents. How much time does it take an Egyptian with real documents, real time, to actually open a bakery? Not to operate a bakery, not to get out of a bakery, but just to enter. And it takes 549 days, working 8 hours a day. So under those conditions, of course, you're going to get a long informal economy.
Please show our audience, I mean, how big it is.
Oh, sure.
To open one furn, one bakery.
Yeah.
Just to
So-
open.
oh, sure,
We
of
can
course.
build a bridge between you and me here.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Let's do it. This is step by step,
These are.
and these are all the
documents.
steps, and these are all the documents, and these are all the waiting time. Because, you know, you take the real opportunity cost. What does it take to take a bus? What happens if that day the office is not open? What happens if they lost your archive? Well, it takes 541 days. So that's a bakery. If you want to build a construction near Giza, it can take you 10 years, which is longer than it took the pharaoh to construct the pyramid of Giza.
Yeah.
So what you've got is very similar to other developing countries, which is you were not expecting so many people to come into your market economy. You were not expecting them to be entrepreneurs. And they are entrepreneurs and they want to get in and they can't get in. They don't necessarily recognize themselves entrepreneurs.
Now I'm stuck in the middle of the bakery.
You're stuck in the middle of a bakery.
Of the bakery, yeah.
But look, it's the same story for just about everything.
So people just get stuck into that, or they just find themselves a shorter way.
Now we start getting closer to the illegal economy, which is you force everyone to look for corruption. How do I cut across this? This is if you want to do things legally. It's hard to find. If you can't do things illegally, then you go out and you bribe, and then you get corruption. And then when you have corruption, then comes your black economy. In other words, when people live outside the rule of law, you will have created space for gangsters, and you will have created space for people who want to also be violent. So the informal economy, let me put it this way, just recently, about 2 months ago, President Obama of the United States legalized 14 million undocumented workers in the United States, immigrations, right? They came from China, they came from Peru, from Mexico, from everywhere. 14 million, that was formalization. In other words, reality is always 2 steps ahead of the law. You cannot always legislate what is going to come, but when it comes, how quickly can you react? This indicates
Was he quick enough when he had to go to 14 million? This means that the United States was pretty late.
it was late if you want to, but not as late as we are in the third world. Okay, that's number one. Number two, it is that he said a very interesting statement, which is you cannot govern people that you don't know where they are or what they're doing. They're inside, and that's a reality, and I have to address that. So what he's given them is equal rights. President Obama, who not necessarily is a person whose ideals I sympathize with, has given all the undocumented people the same rights. He hasn't gone in and said, I'm going to give you micro enterprise because you're small. I like you to remain small. He hasn't given you small little discrete credits. He hasn't gone out and given you special assistance. He has made every undocumented worker have exactly the same rights to do enterprise as every other American. That's inclusion. So the reply to all of that is that it took time to do it if you want to in the United States, but they've done it, and they've done it in one fell swoop. And that's pretty admirable.
And has it worked? Is it working?
Well, 20 November. It's 2 months ago. We don't know if it's going to work, but it will work. Here's the part that's really interesting, which is in my country, for example, like in your country, in Egypt, like in Ethiopia, like in Morocco, like anywhere in the world, if you ask people to become formal, they say, I won't, because they sense this. They haven't measured it, but they know it's hostile. But when they migrate to Europe or the United States, they march in the streets to become legal. So obviously, it's not that our people don't like the law. They don't like bad law.
And they don't like the way we practice the law against them, not for them.
That's right. So the thing is, you have to look at your legal system. You have to trust your people. And you have to trust your people that they will tell you the truth, provided you ask them.
You have to trust your people, that is, do I as a citizen have to trust my government, or does the government has to trust me as a citizen?
I would say that what the government has got to do to trust you is ask the right questions. If I'm a government official of Egypt or Peru, and I come to you and I say, you know, government is government and I am what I am. So I want to know who you are, who you're married to, where you live, what deals you make, who you're a cousin of. I want to see if you really got a title to your home, or I might evict you, because I'm going to spend a long time persecuting you for that. I'm going to close your business down, and I'm going to ask something like that. That Egyptian, that Peruvian will not give you any information. However, if you come in and you say, look, I know that you have to sleep at night somewhere, so you have a home. And I know that you have a job and that you have created yourself, but you have not recorded it. I want to tell you that the president of Egypt has decided that all of you will have the right to your homes one way or another. Compensation, whatever it is, everybody will have a win-win situation. So you will no longer have persecution. Once your home is titled, the value will go up immediately. Obviously, you know, if I was going to buy this TV station and you did not give me a title, the TV station would be worth nothing, because what am I buying if it's not a piece of paper? All right. So here's the thing. If you go in there and you say, I am going to make you a full owner of your business, and I'm going to make you a full owner of your home, now give me your name, give me your address, give me everything. Everybody will tell you everything, because you've exchanged information against assets. You cannot get that through a survey. You have to give something.
So this means, as a government, I'm buying information?
But yes, do you know any government in the world that doesn't buy information? Of course they buy information.
Well,
You want to?
the United States government doesn't buy
Oh,
them,
but
it
of
just
course.
takes them.
No, the United States government says you want to drive a car. That they even tell you, do you want to drive a car? And you say no. But then how am I going to identify you? So the Americans also give driver's license for people who don't drive. They have to. You always get information against something. One example, I got into Egypt 2 days ago. And when I went through your migrations, and they said, who are you? I said, look, my name is Hernando de Soto. I have got a very good relationship with President Sisi. I'm going to go meet the Prime Minister. And my ancestors came probably from the Arab world to a certain degree through Spain. And they said, look, just do me a favor.
Fill this up.
Here's your passport. It's in a document. So you always pay for information. You cannot work. I went to the hotel afterwards, and in the hotel they said, how are you going to pay? And I said, well, I'm an honest Peruvian. Maybe there's not many, but there's honest Peruvians, and I do some payment. And they said, how do I know what you've got in Peru? You don't know what I've got in Peru. Here's my Visa card. Okay, so we have managed, thanks to the fact that there's paper that proves what I've got, this company gives me credit, and the hotel in Egypt accepts it. You always pay for information, always, even before information technology.
Okay, can I give you just some of the comments here, or some of the things from our viewers? Mona is asking you to comment on Dr. Galal Amin, the professor of economics at the American University in Cairo, probably you know him, who said the poor can never benefit from a credit system that sides with the major capitalists and proprietary classes, no matter what deeds and documents proving their entitlements are registered. The rich will continue to harvest most of the credits, and the entitled poor will not find any benefit of the registered documents except for selling their small properties to the proprietors, who will only become richer. Dr. Amin said giving the poor deeds of entitlements would be like tapping signs on their backs that say, kick me, because all this would end up with kicking the poor out of their properties instead of enhancing their livelihoods.
Well, I know Ahmed Galal. He's a very fine economist.
No, that's Dr. Galal Amin, different from Dr. Ahmed Galal. This is Galal Amin.
Okay.
Amin,
Well,
one
okay.
of our very old hands in economy. And
Okay, good.
Many
I made
people
a
have
mistake.
graduated his hands.
I'm very glad to know that it's not the same person. So here's the reply to that. The reply to that is he's a pessimist and I'm an optimist. Okay? It depends on the system. For example, everything that was Apple computers, yeah, was built around a man that was called Steve Jobs. Okay, Steve Jobs, in case your audience doesn't know it, was an Arab. All right, so it depends where he gets his credit. If you are in a system that is dominated by a superior class that doesn't award credits according to profitability, but awards them according to privileges of a sort, you've got a bad law. Your banks are not under control. There is no reason to suppose that all the people who have surged where there was no credit before, Japan, which was poorer than Peru before the Second World War, all have surged. Japan surged, Taiwan has surged, China is surging, Korea is surging, Peru has the highest growth rate in Latin America. Our middle class has grown 4 times than the rest of Latin America. Why do you become so pessimistic regarding Egyptians? The question is, how good is your law? If you, instead of writing the law in a dark chamber, consulting only the existing bankers, and do not get into getting information for your informal economy, you will not know why things don't work. The problem that you have in Egypt, which is similar to ours, is that you basically don't know your informal economy. That's why I've come here, because I don't know Egypt, but I do know informality and I do know the sickness, and I know that you don't have information. Once you have information, you can then correct the law and make it work.
You've been frequenting Egypt since the 90s, is this true?
Since about the year 2000, yes.
Since about what has happened? I mean, 14 years and nothing has happened. And who funds your visits? How does it work?
Well, the way it works is this. We were contacted at a certain time by the Egyptian government in the year 2000 to do the study. We did not come to look for it. We were busy in Latin America and in Asia. But I found this a fascinating country. Besides, you see, if you are able to do something successfully in Egypt, which is a country in crisis, which is a country that has a 6,000 year civilization, older than the rest of us, that created government for all practical purposes, that was able to delineate property, and you can do it successfully, it's a very interesting thing. So we are funded by different foundations, Americans, Germans, etc. In the case of our initial study, the USAID, United States Agency for International Development, funded the Egyptian government, or an organization called Egyptian Center for Economic Studies, to fund us to get results on studying your informal economy. So we're a non-profit organization.
Do we have findings? Are there concrete findings in the hands of the Egyptian government at this stage?
Absolutely. We have not only about an 800-page study, but we have the projects and degrees of laws. As a matter of fact, they were approved by the Economic Cabinet of Egypt, and now President Sisi has asked us to become specific for an updated proposal, and we've handed it in, and we talked about it lengthily this afternoon with the Prime Minister, who asked me to tell you that he was completely engaged in doing this project with us, and we're delighted to have his trust.
All right, let's just put Mr. De Soto's picture today with the Prime Minister, Engineer Ibrahim Mahlib. So you've met today with the Prime Minister, and you've had the discussion, and you've spoken about your 800-page, do we call it study or proposal?
It's the study is 800 pages, the proposal is about 30 pages, that's all you need.
And that's what you discussed with the Prime Minister today?
That's what I discussed with the Prime Minister, and I realized I have to go on a diet after seeing that photograph.
Well, it's our screen, don't worry.
I'm glad to know it's a screen.
It's the screen.
Next time, try and cut it a little bit higher, please.
So you have met, last time you were here with President Sisi, right?
I have met with President Sisi.
That was about a few months ago.
A couple of times.
Okay.
At great length, yes.
And you're expected to meet him again within your visit?
During this stay, yes, indeed.
Okay. What's next? I mean, you met with the Prime Minister, you'll be meeting with the President. What's next?
I think the first thing is to understand that putting in the rule of law, which is finding out why Egyptians are not more productive than they are, and understanding that it's a lack of legal infrastructure. and adequate support from existing laws. I mean, there must be a reason for which 92% of the doors that you knock on Egypt, when they open the door, the person that in your registry says he's the owner is not the person who opens the door. In other words, your paper no longer reflects reality. Once it does, then paper can move around. Everything you do in a system that is essentially capital for the poor moves on paper, on plastic, or a blip on the screen. So what's important is to understand that this is no different from the West German government integrating the East German economy. That's what it's about. It's like Obama integrating the undocumented people. It is like the United States welcoming 36 million inhabitants in the 19th century. You are about to create a country that has to change its traditional ways of doing things in such a way, it's like a nest, in such a way that those who are in the system feel assured that nothing will harm them, and that those outside the system understand that they have enormous potential. And there you will find out why people actually went to Tahrir Square. You will find out why the Arab Spring began. You know, we have studied the people who self-immolated in the Arab Spring the first 2 months, from December 2010 until February 2011. All the guys who self-immolated in the first 2 months and brought down 4 governments were all informal entrepreneurs, without exception. It's interviewed, it's in a film airing in the United States now. No proletariat, all entrepreneurs.
But I mean, I know a lot of people who were in Tahrir Square in 2011. They were not part of the informal sector. They were employees of banks, multinationals, actors, directors, homosexuals. I mean, everybody was out there.
Yeah, I mentioned the following thing. I didn't say who was against the status quo. I said who was willing to die to change. Who was willing.
Those in the front lines, you mean? And those who were sitting, having tea on the side, is this what you mean?
Look, it's not scientific, but it stands to reason. If you're willing to die for a cause, it's got to be a very interesting cause. You see, everyone who lit up all throughout the Middle East and North Africa, all those people who lit up and self-immolated, did it because they wanted to make a statement.
Does this apply to Libya? I mean, Libya, everybody's rich in Libya.
There are things that have to do with dignity. Everybody can be subsidized by the state, but that doesn't mean that everybody's happy. The important thing is that there isn't one country.
So it was about not being happy, not about being informal.
I think the important thing to realize is that because your history in the Arab world, and especially Egypt, is so rich, you always look for explanations in the past. But what if the explanation is not the past? The explanation is rather the present. How about thinking that maybe the Industrial Revolution has come to the Middle East, and that now you've got a series of people who want to come into the economy, and you don't have a way of reacting.
Let me put the question by the time you check whether this is the wife who's calling you, telling you that maybe you need to say something else. But let me ask you this.
I don't think it's the wife, unfortunately, but go on.
Let me put it this way. There is this small full cart that sells beans sandwiches, and the guy employs 3-4 people, and they work from, you see these probably in the streets since you're frequenting Egypt. They work 4 a.m. to 11 a.m. and then they go home. And they make each of them 20 pounds, 30 pounds, except for the owner who makes maybe 100 pounds a day. This is informal economy. Can this be legalized, or this is way too micro to be part of the system?
There's different solutions, and that's why you need a system of feedback to the political system, because things respond to different situations. First of all, regarding the street vendors, they're the part that shocks you the most because you see them in the street. They confront you on the street. They are aggressive and they sell, so you get the feeling of the informal economy. But in fact, they're probably not more than 2% of your total informal population. Now, the first thing that's interesting is that when you find out those who are in the street is whether they want to stay in the street, the enormous majority doesn't stay in the street. What it does is after 13 years, it moves into a shop or into a mall because they have no refrigeration, they have no running water, they have no way to protect themselves from bad weather. So nobody likes being in the streets, it's where it goes. Now, does that mean the streets will be cleared? Well, there are some markets in the world, like the Marché aux Puces in Paris, for example, or the Rialto in Venice, in Italy, which are charming, and everybody likes to keep them in the streets. So you have to see how you go about it. And the fact of it is that essentially they have to have the choice. And if people don't want them on the streets, then you kick them out, but you give them a place they want to be. Nobody likes to be on the streets. It's full of, there's no bathrooms on the streets. So it's dirty, it's infection. The police are always looking for benefits.
But now that we've mentioned it, we're talking about, you know, those vendors out on the streets. I mean, maybe you've heard, read that all those that were in downtown, especially those that had increased their number since 2011, multiplied, and the government had decided to relocate them, move them out of downtown, take them to an area where actually nobody goes to, and told them, okay, you can sit here and sell to nobody. They stayed maybe for 3 days, and then they flee the whole place. How do you think the government should have dealt with such a situation, especially that it is present in other major cities all over Egypt?
Right. Well, I think the solution to that would be the following. First of all, it's like you and me. At this moment, you're interviewing me, and that's a good thing for me. And hopefully it's a good thing for you. Thank you very much. But imagine that they take us to a place where there's no camera and no microphone. We won't stay there, not even one day. Why go there? So the more important thing about anything is location, location, location. You will see if we actually go to any street vendor organization and ask them where they want to be, they'll know where they want to go. The problem is, just like there's all these papers to make a
But they want to
bakery-
go where neither the government nor the rest of the people want them to be.
No, they want to go to some place for which you do not have a government body that is ready to give them access to appropriate location. You see, you are talking about a country, your country, which is equivalent to my country, where 92% of the people have not declared where they're living, where 86% of the enterprises are outside the law. And so you do not have an apparatus for listening to them, which is what President Sisi requested of us. How do I listen to my people? How do I know that they've got these problems? It's enormous. So what do you do? Well, there's a solution to that, which is you've got to create organizations, the purpose of which is to integrate, not to give charity, not to look down on them as if they're poor, but respect them as potential big producers if need be. If you keep on having the same attitude that is equivalent in my country and other places, saying these people are not capable of growing, then you've got a prejudice. But the fact is that Egyptians for ages have always been capable of being extremely inventive, are great entrepreneurs. I can't walk down the street in Egypt, in Cairo, without anybody trying to sell me something. Everybody wants to sell me something. I mean, these are great
good or
entrepreneurs.
bad?
What?
Is this good or bad?
No, it's good, because that's the way the world works.
It's good from your point of view as an economist, but not good in the point of view of a tourist.
No, I think that the tourists are the first ones to sit there and start negotiating. No, that's a reason you come to a developing country. It has color. Now, you may want to put that into an orderly system, yes, but you have to remember that we are not in the 21st century of the West. We are in the 19th century of the United States with the California gold rush, with cowboys, with people that have not yet settled where they want to go, where it's not clear whether this is Mexico or the United States yet, whether this belongs to the Cherokees or it belongs to the Apaches. We're still there. You cannot demand of informal entrepreneurs the same behavior and criteria that you do from a 21st century country. You cannot.
A question from Mustafa. Why were you talking about impediments for the growth of the Egyptian economy before the American Senate in 2013?
Before the American Senate, I don't understand the question.
Did you go before the American Senate in 2013 speaking to them about impediments to the growth of Egyptian economy?
Oh, no, I didn't. I went for other reasons. I actually went there to defend Egypt, to the Foreign Affairs Committee. Regarding the rest, we have written most of the work, a lot of the important works on the informal economy. So in the Senate, they use a lot of our work and they quote us a lot. And they apply it also to the US economy. I mean, all of these economies are, to a degree, informal or formal. They're just less informal than we are.
So how were you defending Egypt at the Senate when you went for a hearing?
Yeah, because I don't think that the issue is essentially a faith issue. I think that the essential issue that you can deal with and fast is an economic issue, that these people are not allowed inside. And I based it on the studies we need.
Which people who are not allowed?
Well, the informal economy. I repeat what I said before, which was that we took 64 actually, of the people who self-immolated, and they were all informal entrepreneurs. And these are the people that labor cry. Let us put it this way. Every time that I look at my friends in the Middle East, and I talk about friends because I also think that I come somewhat or other, at least I look Lebanese in the worst of cases.
Yes.
Right. Every time you go in there and you try and find a common cause, how do we create a united Arab Republic? You can't get together. You're always failing. But when the Arab Spring came along, these 64 entrepreneurs got together, and the message they sent to the rest of the country was something that we don't understand as symbols, but the whole of the Middle East rose up in arms. The whole of the Middle East rose up in arms. So there's a message there. There's no proof that you can bring in science, because politics is not a science, but it does indicate that when a man was selling and buying on the street and the authorities took away his goods, all of the Arab population from Mauritania all the way up to Syria reacted. There's a message there. That's all we're saying.
Okay.
You have doubts, but you see,
Major doubts.
here's the question. The question is, what's the alternative explanation? Are you a hopeless nation? What's your alternative explanation?
Well, leave my because that would take a couple of hours
Yeah.
every day in order to try and get into that. And I'm trying to best use my time with you because you've got valuable information to award our viewers here. Are you willing to hear some criticism from our
Oh, sure.
viewers?
I'm used to
Sure?
that. Yes.
You're open to that?
Yes, of course.
Okay. Frederick Taylor de Soto's agenda is not only dangerous for Egypt, but potentially dangerous for billions of people. While I'm sure that de Soto's intentions regarding the benefits of property rights are good, it's surely debatable whether or not these benefits actually trickle down to the people that they are intended to. Data out of the 200,313 Lima households awarded land titles in 1998 and 1999, only about 24% had gotten any kind of financing by 2002. And in that group, financing from private banks was almost nil. In other words, the only capital infusion, which was itself modest, was coming from the states.
It's an interesting point of view, but if I had to find out how many people have mortgaged their homes in the United States to build an enterprise, which is what we're talking about, the 24%, I think 24% is a very good number one. Number two, don't forget that the people that we're talking about are migrants from the Peruvian Andes. That's to say, they're indigenous people who have lived in tribes, and in the first decade, they're already getting credit, which is pretty good. Number three, Peru is now, has been until a year ago, the fastest growing country in Latin America, twice as fast as the average Latin Americans. Number four, our middle class has grown 4 times quicker than the rest. So, you know, you can decide to take a number, decide not to take a number. The fact of the matter is that even when prices of metals in Peru came down, which is one of our main exports, the country kept on growing faster than other countries because of the sizable class that comes along. So the criticism is accepted, but it doesn't stand.
All right, some more?
Yes, of course.
I suspect that Mr. De Soto's background in business has clouded his judgment regarding the benefits of this type of approach. It's easy to believe that business will save the world when you derived your own economic success from these types of ventures.
Well, you know, it's relatively simple. when you ask Egyptians where they're going to migrate, they're going to go to a capitalist country. Nobody's going to migrate to a non-capitalist country. Will Egyptians go to North Korea? Will they go to Zimbabwe? Will they go to Cuba? Nobody goes to those countries. You go to the countries that are successful. Now, what's the problem? The problem is that the word capitalist is a very bad word. I mean, I have trouble using the word because it means exploitation. And it has come from a nasty tradition of people exploiting other people. So nobody says that the system is perfect. What you have to do is make sure that the system is sensitive to the poor, which is what we're talking about. And that's really all there is to it.
Okay, one of my guests here was saying that your figures, which I'm asking you to repeat them here to our viewers, about the value of unregistered housing, they say that your figures are either inaccurate or exaggerated. Tell me the figures first, and
Sure.
tell me if they are, why do you think they are accurate?
Okay. Of the informal economy, which means those people who have, for example, built houses, either on agricultural land next to the Nile, either the houses that are built for public housing in the Nasser city, or old city houses, etc., or those that have been appropriated through rent controls. You take all of that together and you classify it as such, because even if you are in rent control systems, you don't have the title. Somebody else has the title. So that's all informal to us. All of those you calculate on the basis of value of reposition. In other words, you calculate how many bricks, how much cement, how much iron is used.
Relocate, meaning that if I take this family right now and I put them in a new house today, how much would it cost to build the new house?
That's right. That's exactly it. So nobody's fooling around with market figures which allow room for bad interpretation. We had that in mind. The question is, what is the value? And of course, market value is always higher, or traditionally higher. But anyhow, what happens through that is that it's $360 billion of housing, which is perfectly natural if you are about 90 million Egyptians and maybe 80% of your homes or constructions are outside the rule of law. So it's perfect. It rhymes with just about everything we have in Peru, everything we've seen in Mexico, everything we've seen in Tanzania. The proportions are the same. But here's the part that's interesting. You are now negotiating in Egypt to get support from international organizations and other governments to help you get out of the crisis in which you're in. So maybe you're negotiating for $2 billion from the International Monetary Fund or the World Bank. The poor of Egypt have $360 billion, and none of it can be used because it doesn't have paper, because it doesn't have a passport. Okay, so what we're saying is that 360 billion is the figure, and any time that people don't agree, please invite them to a debate with you, with the numbers, and we'll discuss it.
All right, I can definitely and would love to do that when you're here next time. So does this mean that you'll be here more often in the near future, after meeting with the president in a day or two?
I hope so. I hope so because, first of all, not only do I really like Egypt very much, as anybody who knows me always hears me talk about it, but even for a very selfish reason. If we are able to, for example, help the government of the Fiji Islands formalize, right? Or we can help the people of Paraguay formalize. The world will not talk about it. But if it happens in Egypt, the world will talk about it, because Egypt is the center of attention of the world. And they know that you need to move into a modern economy. Everybody seems to be in agreement. So if that happens, yes, I would come here as much as necessary, not because the technology is complicated, but because of the policy judgments, like the criticisms that you're talking about. Those criticisms have to be answered, because you're asking people to change, and they have every right to criticize, and you have every need to actually respond.
How do you feel about the growth rates right now of the Egyptian economy, and especially that we're coming up for the economic conference in March, and all this, and how the financial institutions have changed the rankings, improved it slightly? How do you see it, even though you have predicted that if things work well for the Egyptian economy, the growth rate will reach 2% in 5 years.
Yeah. Well, you know, indicators that the world uses for growth and potential growth are not really structured to look at the reality of our countries. When you have an informal economy, it means two things. It means that you have people that are repressed and that you have to emancipate, you have to empower. But it also means another thing, which is you have no idea why they're so poor, because they're not talking to you and they're not telling you the truth. So the potential of Egypt's informal economy, is not really well structured within the numbers that you're looking at. But I tell you the following thing. If this TV station here that we're in were worth $300 million, and I am a representative of multi-billionaire Carlos
The
Slim.
owner will sell it the same day if it's worth $300 million.
Okay, let's bring it down. 200. All right.
Okay.
We got 200. Now, at that time, just when we're about to close the deal, I say, look, my friend Ossama, do me a favor, pass me the title so that I will able to show Carlos Slim that I bought it. And you said, look, there's no title. But everybody knows, the governor knows, the neighbors know, the head of the TV station that we own it. That will not be worth $200 million. It'll be worth much less. So the day
You
that
want the documents. Give me the document. Give me the papers.
we travel on documents. Every time you change
But
value.
you know, one of the problems about, for example, you say that you go to a house expecting that somebody would open the door and somebody else would open. It's also because of stupid government laws that you really have to go to them, prove to them, give them every possible document. They want the document from you that you really live there. And you tell them, come and take a photo of me. They'd say, now give me a receipt of electricity. You say, I can't have a subscription in electricity in my name because I don't have the contract. And I don't have the contract because I don't have the ID in my name that does this. So it's this dilemma. Are you going to sort out this dilemma? Do you have the ways, or does it have to happen through some other entity?
No, we have the ways. But what we're going to do is show our Egyptian friends how different parts of the world get you through this labyrinth. In other words, it's not bad will. It's not that people don't want to work. It's that your legal system is terrible. I mean, if 92% of Egyptians don't say where they live officially, it has to be terrible. And what we're seeing wherever we poke is that it is pretty bad. So the solution to this is, how do we Egyptians create a law that serves the people and not just simply the government? That's your challenge.
Will you talk to the new parliament when it's there?
I will do what the president asks me, because this is not my country. I am simply an advisor.
I mean,
who
talk
has a
to,
big
I don't
mouth.
mean by talk to like personally standing and talking to them, but I mean,
sure.
the message needs to be addressed to the lawmakers, and the lawmakers in less than 3 months' time will be a parliament, not the president.
Let me tell you, in the next 4 or 5 months, if things start working, you will find Egyptians who know Egypt better than I do, who will have understood this very well, and they will talk to the parliament and do it much better than I can. All you have to understand is this: the law is what brings people together. Customs are what bring people together. Well, customs work because I come into Egypt, everybody says, welcome to Egypt. Even the men kiss me. Everybody's happy, all right? But when it comes to paper, it's terrible. You've got to settle your paper. Now, that has a problem, which is that the lawyers run the paper. But lawyers don't know how to run order. Economists know how to run order. But economists don't know how you do the law. So the question is, how do you bring that all together? And the reply to that is politics. The time to make a transition to a modern economy and consider that Egyptians are extremely successful in the West and extremely unsuccessful here, and ask yourself if maybe it is not the law.
Mr. Hernando de Soto, I enjoyed the discussion with you. I'm sure it's going to take us about half an hour after we finish this talk in order to put together the little booklet of how to create an Egyptian bakery. But the talk was enjoyable, the information was smooth, so I thank you very much and I wish you luck.
Well, you're an excellent journalist. I'm very glad to be here. Thank you so much, and I wish Egypt the best.
Thank you.